I was squire to Sir Arlen of Pennytree since I was a boy. He charged me to be a good knight, to defend the weak and the innocent, and I swore that I would.
Are you Baelor Targaryen?
No.
Then would you move the fuck out of the way?
Yeah, sorry.
What's your name?
Sir Duncan the Tall.
Never heard of him.
Do you know every knight in the Seven Kingdoms, then?
The good ones. If you could bring me to Ashford, I could squire for you, sir.
Rob me, and I'll hunt you down with dogs.
You don't have dogs!
I'll get some.
Where?
Oh!
Boys, stop gaping. See to my horse.
I'm not a stable boy, my lord.
Not clever enough.
I know I'm just a hedge knight, but sometimes I think there could be more.
Why do you treat these royal lapdogs like they're your betters?
They are my betters.
These men have a name. I'm trading. What chance do I have?
I have no chance.
Falling star brings luck to those who see it.
So the luck is ours alone? I need to fight honorably. But sometimes I think I buried my courage alongside the old man.
Within every man, there are many men. So be brave. Be just.
Get up!
Be tall.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. We have a brand new Game of Thrones Night of the Seven Kingdoms trailer from New York Comic Con. There's a whole bunch of brand new footage, Easter eggs, so we'll break it all down. I'll be doing videos for all the episodes, just like House of the Dragon, just like the original main series, so be sure to subscribe if you're brand new to the channel. Everybody grab your Valyrian swords and your shields. HBO explained a lot about the series at their big New York Comic Con panel. George R. R. Martin was there. There are going to be a lot of differences from the previous Game of Thrones series and House of the Dragon, so we'll explain how it's going to be different and what's going to be happening in the next couple of years with Game of Thrones just in general. If you're not a book reader, this is based on the tales of Dunk and Egg. Currently, there are only 3 novellas that George R. R. Martin has written. HBO said that it's already committed to adapting all 3 across 3 different seasons. They've implied that they plan to release each season once per year because the show is much smaller, there are fewer special effects, there are no dragons, so it's way easier for them to actually make episodes. There's only going to be 6 episodes per season, and the episodes will be closer to like a 30-minute runtime as opposed to like a full hour or longer like the original Game of Thrones series or House of the Dragon. Thankfully, they gave us a pretty long trailer, so we'll just start at the beginning here. So we see Dunk bearing Sir Arlen of Pennytree, then later explaining who he is, where he comes from, sort of his mission statement. This is meant to be for a lot of people who haven't read the books too. Like, this is who I am, this is why I'm important, this is why this series is going to be important. Season 1 is specifically adapting Book 1 of the trilogy, The Hedge Knight, which is a reference to Sir Arlen of Pennytree, who was a hedge knight who squired Dunk until one day on the way to the tourney at Ashford that he was going to compete in, died of old age, and because Dunk grew up in Flea Bottom wanting to be a knight his whole life, he decided to take Sir Arlen's armor and horses and decided to try and enter the tournament himself. One of the big problems with that is that in order to enter tournaments, you actually had to be a knight, and Dunk was not officially a knight, so he basically lied his way into the tournament, claiming that Sir Arlen knighted him on his deathbed. Now, there are a lot of conjecture about this, but HBO, in their description of the series, just came out and said the quiet part loud, that Dunk flat out lied about being knighted. I've mentioned this before in my previous videos about the series, but if you've seen Heath Ledger's A Knight's Tale, it's a bit like the plot of that movie. It even has Mark Addy years before he played Robert Baratheon in the original Game of Thrones series. Like, a lot of deep cuts going on here. Hedge Knights are wandering knights without a master, sort of like Ronin samurai, so during Dunk's early life squiring for Sir Arlen, they would just travel around Westeros working for different great houses. They served Lord Leo Tyrell of Highgarden in the Reach, Lord Florent nearby, Lord Dondarrion when he fought the Vulture King in the Red Mountains of Dorne, so they traveled around a lot over the years, mostly the Reach in the southern areas of Westeros, but they also visited King's Landing, so I'm gonna have to get some more Game of Thrones shirts. I can't find my Tyrell shirt. There have been a lot of theories about who Dunk's father is. He's probably a bastard of a lord. Dunk himself thought that his father was a criminal who had been sent to the Wall and thought that he might meet him someday if he traveled to the Wall. George R. Martin, on his side of things, has never confirmed or denied anything, mostly because the whole point of the story is that Dunk is a small folk, a nobody with nothing to his name, who becomes one of the greatest, most celebrated knights and lord commanders of the Kingsguard in Westeros history.
Sir Duncan the Tall. 4 pages for Sir Duncan. He must have been quite a man.
So they say.
There was even a brief reference to him during the original Game of Thrones Season 4 when Joffrey uses his legend to make fun of Jaime. When Sir Arlen dies, Dunk buries him on the side of the road, takes his armor and horses, continues to the next inn on the way to the tourney at Ashford, and it's there that he meets Egg for the first time, without knowing who he really is. They let you know it takes place about 100 years before the original Game of Thrones series, so pretty far from the events of the Blackfire Rebellion and the Dance of the Dragons even, and pretty far from the main series, so like firmly in the middle here between both shows. This is him a little while after that, after he's buried Sir Arlen, pulls his sword, and then makes the decision to fight in the tournament and become a knight himself. When he starts talking about the tenets of the knight, they also cut in the scene where they start putting his armor on him. So part of the idea is that he's so big, Sir Arlen's armor does not fit him, so he has to sell Sir Arlen's armor and one of his horses, one of his prized horses that he loves so much, in order to pay for the armor. One of the other big parts of that is choosing the new crest that he's going to use as his coat of arms as a knight, and he winds up choosing things that Egg actually points out, the falling star and the tree that they're under. This isn't meant to directly be a reference to the Knight of the Laughing Tree, Lyanna Stark, much later in the timeline during another tournament, but because they like to have their Easter eggs on the TV shows, maybe they'll wink at that on the TV show here. When Baelor Targaryen's servant brings the horse to the stable, tries to tell him to get out of the way, Baelor Targaryen is Maekar's older brother, and he's the heir presumptive. Baelor is supposed to become the next heir after their father, Daeron II, passes away. Dunk winds up meeting him during the events of the tournament, and he also winds up being on his Trial by 7 team. That's probably going to be one of the biggest parts of the trailer. Don't worry, we'll get to that because we're working through the trailer shot by shot. Notice in the background you can see the banners for Dorne. They cut together footage of Dunk reaching the tournament and then also meeting Egg for the first time at the inn. Aegon V Targaryen, the eventual king of Westeros, but at this point in history, he's so low in the line of succession that nobody thinks he ever has a chance of being king. He is the 4th son of a 4th son. That's how low in the line of succession he is. So eventually his father, Maekar I, will become king at a certain point, but at this point when the show begins, he's very low in the line of succession. So one of the reasons why they're telling this story during this part of the timeline is that several things just go wrong in the worst possible way for the realm, for the Targaryen family, that it completely shifts the course of history of Westeros, upending the line of succession, putting Egg much, much closer to the Iron Throne. When Dunk arrives at the inn, he meets a drunken man who claims he dreamt of him. That's Daeron Targaryen, Egg's older brother, one of Maekar's older sons. Most people also take this as a sign that Daeron also had dragon dreams, the same way that Helaena has dragon dreams, so he actually saw a dragon dream of Dunk eventually becoming Egg's protector and Lord Commander of the Kingsguard when Egg eventually ascends the Iron Throne. Then takes his horses to the inn stable, where he meets the boy Egg, who's this bald kid who Dunk just assumes is a common stable boy because his head has been shaved. Maekar, Daeron, Egg himself wanted to hide the fact that he was a Targaryen, and his silver Valyrian hair gave him away miles and miles around. Anybody in the crowd could just pick out Targaryens. That's also how you spot Targaryen bastards, too. So part of the idea is that Maekar, his father, ordered Egg to squire for his brother Daeron, who was competing at the tournament, but he wanted to be incognito. Egg himself doesn't want to squire for his brother, and his brother also doesn't really care that much to fight in the tournament.
If you could bring me to Ashford, I could squire for you, sir.
So when he meets Dunk, he sort of talks his way into becoming his squire, and Dunk reluctantly agrees, and the story unfolds as them slowly getting closer and closer, becoming the best of friends. Basically, the show itself, over the course of all the seasons, is just telling all their adventures long before even bigger WTF things winds up happening, before Aeg winds up ascending the Iron Throne and becoming Aegon the Fifth Targaryen, before Dunk becomes his Lord Commander. Basically them just traveling around Westeros, having all kinds of adventures. But at least during Season 1, most of those adventures are just local to the tourney in Ashford, localized just to the tourney itself. When they joke about Aeg knowing all the good knights in the Seven Kingdoms, that's because he's one of the royal princes, and living at the Red Keep, he would know the Kingsguard, and they are all the best knights in the kingdom. There are a couple more scenes showing the vibe between them at the beginning when they first meet each other, Dunk treating him like a common squire because he doesn't know that he is Aegon Targaryen yet. Dunk starts to see the royal procession coming to the tournament. One of the big things you notice on the new Targaryen sigil during this part of the timeline is that they've returned to the two-legged dragon design. George R. R. Martin probably influenced that, wanting them to go back to 2 legs instead of the 4 legs during House of the Dragon. That was actually a big debate when House of the Dragon started. He winds up running into one of Aeg's older brothers, Aegon Targaryen, who's basically going to be the antagonist of Season 1. We get our first look at Tanzell Too Tall, who's doing the puppet show with the dragon here, because remember, this is after the death of the dragons. She winds up kind of being Dunk's love interest, but during the events of the 3 books, they never actually get together. But George R. R. Martin actually said that Tanzell will star in future Dunk and Aeg stories that he winds up writing, and there are a lot of rumors that he does ultimately eventually get with her, and she is the ancestor of Brienne of Tarth as well as he is. That is all still theory and conjecture right now, though. Aeg himself, the other main character of the show, is the younger brother of Maester Aemond, who mentions him on his deathbed during the original Game of Thrones series. During the events of this show, Aemond is at the Citadel studying to become a maester, so if we see him, it'll be in scenes outside of the actual tournament. And same with the Bloodraven, Brynden Rivers. Right around this time when Season 1 is happening, Maekar's older brother, Aerys I, eventually succeeds their father, Daeron II, as the next king because of the spring sickness. This big pandemic that sweeps Westeros, kills a whole bunch of people in the line of succession, which is how Aeg gets much closer to the Iron Throne. So if we see the younger version of the Bloodraven on the show, it'll probably be connected to the spring sickness storyline because of what's going on across Westeros during the events of Season 1. Since Brynden Rivers is also a Greenseer like Bran, they might use him to connect to the prophecy of the prince who was promised in the Long Night, the White Walkers subplot that they've been using on the House of the Dragon series to connect all the different shows together. We literally just saw younger Brynden Rivers' Three-Eyed Raven during Season 2, Episode 8, during Daemon's visions. Also a fun Easter egg how all these characters are connected. Once Aeg eventually ascended the Iron Throne as Aegon V later in his timeline, he was the one who sentenced Brynden Rivers to take the Black, sending him to the Wall, where he would then eventually become Lord Commander years later, then also years later eventually abandon the Night's Watch to go beyond the Wall and become the Three-Eyed Raven. Maester Aemond also took the Black when this was all going down and accompanied Brynden Rivers when he was sent to the Wall, but he took the Black because he was abdicating his place in the line of succession because he was originally supposed to be the next king before his brother Aegon V, but because he didn't want to cause another civil war in the family like the Dance of the Dragons or the Blackfyre Rebellion, which had just gone down and decimated the realm, he chose to take the Black, which is ultimately how Aeg wound up becoming the next king, naming himself Aegon V. The other big thing that people are usually talking about when they mention Duncan Aegon V Targaryen is the tragedy at Summerhall, when they, and a very large portion of the Targaryen royal family, died while Aegon was trying to hatch a number of dragon eggs. What I'll probably do is a completely separate bonus video about the tragedy at Summerhall just because it's such a big event and it's so far later in his timeline that the closest we'll probably see or references to that are just foreshadowing or maybe some dragon dreams referencing it, the way that they use dragon dreams during House of the Dragon to foreshadow things that will eventually come, like the coming of Daenerys eventually. There's a little bit of comedy of him trying to actually join the tournament itself and prove that he is an actual knight because you have to be a knight to become part of the tournament. Then we actually get some jousting scenes, and they actually said that they have some of the best jousting scenes that they've ever done on any Game of Thrones series during this. That was like one of their big missions, make one of the best jousting shows ever. There's another quick scene of Prince Maekar and his sons. Aeg is his youngest son, but it's Daeron Targaryen, Aerion Targaryen, Aemond Targaryen, who's actually studying to be a maester, so Maester Aemond is not sitting here at the actual tournament. And he's got 2 daughters, Aeg's 2 sisters, Daela and Rhae. This Baratheon is Lionel Baratheon. He actually shows up a couple times in the trailer and being on Dunk's Trial by 7 team. Then the trailer jumps forward to him actually entering the battlefield for the Trial by 7. The whole difference with the Trial of 7 versus Trial by Combat is that it's 7 versus 7, and last man standing basically wins. Part of the idea is that Aegon Targaryen, drunk, attacks Tanzel Too Tall. Dunk defends her, but it's a crime to strike a crown prince. So rather than be thrown in the black cells or killed, Dunk chooses Trial by 7, then chooses 6 other supporters of his, and Aegon does the same too, and they fight. And that's going to be like the big WTF moment of the actual show. We get a brief look at their different lineups. So Duncan's champions were Baelor Targaryen, the Crown Prince. Remember, this is Maekar's older brother, so this is like a really big deal. It's going to be cool to actually see him, meet him on the show. Lionel Baratheon, also a very powerful person in Westeros. Raymond Fossaway, Humphrey Beesbury, Humphrey Harding, and Robin Riesling. Aerion's champions were himself, Daeron Targaryen, his brother, Maekar Targaryen, their father, also royal prince, Stephen Fossaway, then 3 different members of the Kingsguard, William Wilde, Donald Duskendale, and Roland Crakehall. So this winds up being another minor civil war inside the Targaryen family because you have the crown prince and his younger brother and his sons all fighting each other with some of the Kingsguard thrown in there. The whole reason why it's Trial by 7 is because of the 7 gods. It's based on the Andal traditions. 7 champions per team for the 7 different gods. Then they end the actual trailer with them actually beginning the Trial by 7, so probably going to be one of the best parts of the actual show. Probably one of the things working in this show's favor big time is that they're adapting a story that's already been written in a novel format, like perspective format, as opposed to House the Dragon, which is an adaptation of Fire and Blood, which is more of a glorified wiki of Targaryen facts about the realm, than deep character work and drama that you see in the main Song of Ice and Fire novels, which are written from each of the characters' perspectives so you understand their motivations, why things are happening in way better context than you do in, say, like Fire and Blood.
Well, funny you should ask. Let me get my map.
George R. R. Martin himself, who was at the panel, also said that he loved all the Night of the Seven Kingdom episodes, while at the same time yelling about House of the Dragon Season 2 episodes. You probably remember him yelling about that. So even though I haven't seen any of the episodes myself beyond the trailers here, I think that it bodes well for the new Night of the Seven Kingdom series. It sounds like it'll be a much more book-accurate adaptation of House of the Dragon, and most book readers agree that the Duncan Egg novellas are some of the best Game of Thrones written work that George R. R. Martin has done. So hopefully this will turn into a big slam dunk for them, but if you're not a book reader, you don't know anything about the tales of Duncan Egg, you have to go into this understanding that it's meant to feel like a much different vibe from the main show, a much smaller, more intimate character drama. Probably one of those first big noticeable differences that you heard while watching the trailer for the first time was the very different soundtrack. Ramin Djawadi is not doing the music for the show like he did for the original Game of Thrones series or House of the Dragon. This time it's Dan Romer doing all the music. I was not super familiar with all of his work before this, but he recently did music for Superman and Lois, Lilo and Stitch, Station 11, which is the HBO connection. That's probably why they went to him, because they liked his previous work with him. Mostly what they're using this first trailer for is to sell you on the idea that it's more about the perspective of the small folk as opposed to being set on the highborn characters like the original Game of Thrones series and House of the Dragon, the Targaryen family, the lords of the other great houses. There's still a number of very powerful figures that you see during the trailer here in the world of Westeros, just in general, like very powerful figures, but they themselves aren't meant to be like the perspective characters that you follow episode to episode. Also, fun fact, cool Easter egg connection here to the other series, there's an episode of the original Game of Thrones series called A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, Season 8, Episode 2. During it, Ramin Djawadi composed a song called Night of the Seven Kingdoms. It's meant to be Brienne of Tarth's theme, as Jaime Lannister formally knights her and names her a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. The connection to the Night of the Seven Kingdoms TV show that we're getting ready to watch, which takes place many, many years earlier in the timeline, is that the protagonist, Sir Duncan the Tall, is Brienne's direct ancestor. That is why she is so tall. Dunk in the books is meant to be 6'11". Now, Peter Clafley, the actor who plays him on screen, is only 6'5", but he still towers over everyone else. There'll be a number of full circle kind of Easter eggs like that during this new prequel series, connective tissue to the other shows, other parts of the Game of Thrones timeline. During House of the Dragon, they mostly been using the prophecy of the prince who was promised to do that. Since Night of the Seven Kingdoms is such a smaller show, like there are no big dragons flying around, those Easter eggs will mostly be in the characters themselves in a couple of key events. Primarily the aftermath of the Dance of the Dragons, which we're watching play out on House of the Dragon right now, the Blackfire Rebellions, which took place a little while after that, another Targaryen civil war inside the family, pretty soon after the Dance of the Dragons, then the eventual death of the dragons, or they believe them to be dead, so that's why it's called the Death of the Dragons in the timeline, in a couple specific characters like the younger version of the Blood Raven, Brynden Rivers, aka the Three-Eyed Raven, and a younger version of Maester Aemond. There are going to be a lot of new characters they introduce that also go on to do very notable, important things later in the timeline, so as we start seeing those Easter eggs and characters and foreshadowing, I'll point them out specifically. There's a lot of brand new lore that they're getting into during this trailer, so if there's any Easter eggs or references that you spotted that I didn't talk about in the video, just write them below in the comments. There'll be more trailers soon. Whatever they wind up releasing, of course I will do all the videos for it. We could go on for an hour about this. We will probably get more trailers soon, so just post all your reactions in the comments below. As they state, episodes start January 18th, and it'll be a weekly show. House of the Dragon Season 3 is supposed to start sometime in June, probably late June, so we'll get more details about that when this show is airing in January. Cannot wait to start doing episode videos again. Big reminder that because it's New York Comic Con, there's going to be a bunch more trailers the next couple of days and a couple big episodes. Be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss any of that. Everybody click here for all my other House of the Dragon videos, and click here for all my other Game of Thrones videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.